news affecting Americans. So how's this going to go? Republican Doug Collins, Vice Chair of the House GOP Conference, member of the House Judiciary Committee. Sir, how are you? And good day to you. And thank you for coming back here in America's Newsroom.
Great, Bill. It's good to be with you.
Okay, 2 days ago, Elijah Cummings said this about the strategy. Watch.
We're going to be very careful with issuing subpoenas. I don't want people to think that the first day I walk in there, we're going to have, 38 subpoenas going out the door. Not going to do that. We're going to do it very carefully and make sure that it's done with integrity. I think the American people have said they want checks and balances. The subpoenas that I want to issue would be much different than what I've seen.
Yeah, I think it's an intriguing answer, sir. What's your expectation?
Well, I think the expectation of what we're seeing right now is Elijah Cummings and many others are trying to tamp down the more vocal parts of their party that have just come in. I think they're struggling right now with what they want to do. They're trying to focus on things that they believe are actually beneficial to the American public, but when they actually get out there, they're trying to strike a balance between actually going after a president that they dislike, which is all they've focused on for the last 2 years, and then maybe figuring out maybe they now have to govern. If they're ready to govern, they'll find some willing partners on the Republican Party, but if they're willing to just go after the president, which they're sort of hedging on right now, which I think they're going to find a lot of trouble within their own caucus about, I think there's going to be issues.
So you think they face pressure internally to go after the subpoena side?
Very much so. Yeah, very much so, Bill. I think what you got to find out is they had many of their folks who ran on very much of almost a socialist agenda. They're coming in right now. They don't like the president. They don't like the fact that, many of them ran on to getting rid of ICE. Think about that for a moment. They want to get rid of ICE. They want to get rid of our ICE enforcement and have basically an open border policy. When they start running on these things of complete more government takeover through Medicare for all, when you start dealing with those, they're having struggles internally to know that those are not popular topics, and then they're having to balance the fact that many of them want to go after the president on everything from tax returns to everything else. That just doesn't play well with the American people. They know it, and I think there's a divide between them right now.
Okay, so Matt Cartwright's a Democrat from Pennsylvania. You know him. He's a colleague, right? On the House Oversight Committee.
Yes,
he says, this is his quote, "I'm against weaponizing the committee. However, I don't want to defang the committee. By the same token, our committee should be more than a political loudspeaker." I think therein lies the question. How far do you go with this? When you just come out of a midterm election where a lot of these men and women were running on issues, what happens to the issues?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see because a lot of their own base want to see, they've even broached this subject of impeachment. They never want to talk about it, but that's what they campaign, that's what they talked about on, and many of their supporters want to see impeachment proceedings brought. If Jerry Nadler wants to bring that in the Judiciary Committee, I will tell you, I will step forward. That will be an issue that they're going to have to deal very harshly with because those are overreaches that I think they're having to struggle with. What they want to do, if Congress has the power of oversight, that's always been a part of what we should do, and that should be proper oversight. But when they go over the bounds and they start fishing, they try to take advantage of red herrings, as we'll call them, that's when I think they're going to run into trouble, and they're going to run into trouble inside their own party, but they're definitely going to run into trouble with Republicans still on the Hill.
Well, you're going to have an election again in 2 years, whether it's immigration, student debt loan, high cost of prescription drugs. That's what a lot of the Democrats ran on. Steve Scalise was quoted this week. He said they didn't campaign on harassing the president, said Scalise. A lot of the seats they flipped from Republican to Democrat, their candidates were talking about being pro-life and pro-gun and not voting with Nancy Pelosi. So if they vote to be obstructionists, they'll do so at a cost 2 years from now. How much consideration have you given that idea so far?
We've given it a lot of consideration. I've traveled all over the country as the vice chair of the conference and campaigned in many of those districts, and many we won, but also some that we lost. And I think the issue here is if you want to campaign, and basically some of these did as sort of Republican ideas, they sort of campaigned as light Republicans while they're actually hiding more of their Democratic liberal base. I think they're going to have trouble trying to defend that. One of the first ones right now is how Nancy Pelosi is marshaling the whole caucus to vote for her for Speaker. Those are some of the very first votes you have to take. So some of these districts in which they came in, they're going to have to deal with the fact that Nancy Pelosi is going to be Speaker. They're going to have to deal with the more liberal agenda, and they're going to have to come in contact with being against things that they campaigned for and saying that they wanted to be with, but also having to deal with the realities of Washington, D.C. when they have much more radical members of their own party that are going to push them to the left. So this is going to be a very interesting ride. They campaigned as something they're probably not, and now they're going to have to govern in which way they decide.
January 3rd is the day. Doug Collins, thank you for your time today from Georgia. Thank you, sir.